The estate attorney adjusted her glasses, looked down at the final page of my parents' will, and spoke the words I never imagined I'd hear. Robert and Margaret Carter leave their estate in equal shares to Michael Carter and Lauren Brooks. She paused. As for Daniel Carter. My heartbeat echoed through the silent conference room. There is no provision. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. No provision. No mistake. Nothing. Across the polished walnut table, my older brother, Michael, leaned back in his chair with the faint smile he'd worn since the meeting began. It wasn't joy. It was satisfaction. Lauren kept her eyes fixed on the table. No one spoke. My parents had built Carter Industrial Systems into one of the largest privately owned manufacturing companies in Colorado. Between the business, investments, real estate, and other assets, their estate was worth roughly $35 million. And somehow, I wasn't part of it. The attorney, Evelyn Harper, closed the binder carefully. I'm very sorry, Mr. Carter. I nodded even though I couldn't feel my face. Growing up, I'd always believed I was different from my siblings. Michael was the golden child, captain of every team, first into the family business, always standing beside Dad at company events. Lauren was Mom's favorite. She had a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable, even when she was quietly avoiding difficult conversations. Then there was me. The quiet son who left Colorado after college to become a civil engineer. I visited. I called. I brought my daughter, Emma, every Christmas. But life happened. Distance happened. Apparently, being forgotten happened too. Michael finally broke the silence. I know this is difficult, Danny. He hadn't called me Danny in 20 years. I'm sure Mom and Dad had their reasons. His voice was smooth. Practiced. Almost rehearsed. Before I could answer, Evelyn frowned at the stack of documents beside her. That's unusual. She reached beneath the leather portfolio and pulled out a large ivory envelope sealed with dark blue wax. Across the front, in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words. For Daniel. Only Daniel. The room froze. Michael's smile disappeared. I don't remember seeing that, he said quickly. Evelyn looked directly at him. It wasn't addressed to you. She handed it across the table. The paper felt heavier than it should have. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter. The first line stole my breath. If you're reading this, then our plan worked. I looked up. What plan? Evelyn quietly said, please continue. I swallowed hard. Daniel, if your brother is smiling while this letter is being opened, then everything happened exactly as we feared. The room became impossibly still. I kept reading. We know being excluded from the will hurt you, and we're sorry for that pain. But we had to know who would reveal their true character when they believed everything belonged to them. I glanced toward Michael. His confident expression had vanished. Dad's words continued. Do not argue. Do not leave. Ask Evelyn to retrieve the Carter family archive from First Mountain Trust. Everything else is there. I lowered the letter. What archive? Evelyn slowly nodded. I was instructed not to mention it unless this envelope was opened. Michael stood so abruptly his chair scraped across the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. Evelyn remained calm. Your father anticipated that reaction. An hour later, we sat in the secure records room of First Mountain Trust. A steel lockbox rested on the table. Evelyn entered 2 keys. One belonged to the bank. The other had been stored inside the envelope. When the lid opened, there wasn't cash or jewelry. There were journals. Photographs. Medical records. Financial statements. USB drives. And another letter. Mom's handwriting this time. Daniel, if you're holding this box, then we weren't able to protect this family while we were alive. My chest tightened. Inside the journals were years of entries. Mom described arguments I'd never known about. Michael insisting she rewrite documents. Michael screening phone calls. Michael telling them I was too busy whenever I tried to visit unexpectedly. Even worse. There were printed emails I'd supposedly sent. Cold. Dismissive. Almost cruel. I don't have time. Maybe next month. Stop making me feel guilty. I stared at them in disbelief. I never wrote these. I know, Evelyn answered quietly. The originals were recovered from your parents' email server. She handed me another folder. Someone had created fake email addresses almost identical to mine. One missing letter. One changed character. Enough to fool two elderly parents unfamiliar with technology. I slowly turned toward Michael. He said nothing. Lauren covered her mouth with both hands. I didn't know about the emails, she whispered. But you knew something, I said. Tears filled her eyes. I knew he kept telling Mom not to bother you. She looked at her brother. I didn't think it had gone this far. Michael laughed. One short, humorless laugh. So what? Dad was sick. The company needed someone capable. Daniel walked away years ago. I moved for my career, I replied. I never walked away from my family. Dad's final journal answered before Michael could. Daniel always came when we called. The problem was, too often we never received the calls he made. I closed the journal. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Suddenly, dozens of memories changed. The birthdays when no one invited me. The holidays that felt strangely distant. The unanswered voicemails. The cancelled visits. They hadn't forgotten me. Someone had made sure we stayed apart. Evelyn reached for another envelope. This one contains your father's final legal instructions. She unfolded several notarized documents. 5 years ago, Robert Carter transferred ownership of Carter Structural Holdings into an irrevocable trust. Michael frowned. What holdings? Evelyn looked directly at him. The division that owns the company's patents and licensing agreements. His face turned pale. Those assets generated most of the company's annual profits. They belong jointly to Daniel Carter. She paused. And his daughter, Emma. Silence. Absolute silence. Dad had hidden the most valuable part of the company. Not from me. From everyone else. Michael slammed both hands onto the table. This is fraud. No, Evelyn replied. This trust was established before your father's diagnosis. She handed over medical evaluations. Independent witnesses. Video testimony. Everything legally verified. Dad appeared on the screen. Older. Thinner. But unmistakably himself. He looked directly into the camera. If Michael is angry right now. He smiled sadly. Then he proved why we had to do this. No one moved. Dad continued. We loved all 3 of our children. But love doesn't mean rewarding manipulation. He took a slow breath. Daniel spent his entire life believing he wasn't enough. His voice cracked. The truth is, he was the only one who never asked us for anything. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. Every year. Every doubt. Every lonely Christmas. Every unanswered phone call. Every moment I'd wondered why I wasn't enough. Gone. Not because they disappeared. Because they had never been true. Mom appeared beside Dad in the recording. She reached for his hand. If you're watching this, sweetheart. She smiled through tears. Please stop carrying the weight we should have lifted years ago. She looked straight into the camera. We never stopped loving you. The recording ended. No dramatic music. No speeches. Just silence. Lauren quietly sobbed. I'm sorry. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was admitting the truth. Michael looked around the room as if searching for someone to rescue him. No one did. Months later, the legal process ended exactly as my parents had planned. The manipulated portions of the estate were overturned. The trust remained intact. Michael lost his executive position after additional financial misconduct came to light during the court proceedings. Lauren accepted a much smaller inheritance and chose not to contest the outcome. Instead, she wrote me a letter admitting that fear had kept her silent for too many years. We're not close. Maybe we never will be. But at least we're honest now. The money changed my life. It paid for Emma's future. It secured generations of our family. But it wasn't the greatest gift my parents left behind. A few weeks after everything was settled, Emma and I drove to the old lake cabin where my parents had spent every anniversary. The sun was setting across the water, painting the surface in shades of gold and orange. I unfolded their final letter one last time. Not to search for answers. This time, I already had them. Emma slipped her hand into mine. Were Grandpa and Grandma really proud of you? I smiled through tears. For a long time, I didn't think so. I looked toward the quiet lake where the evening breeze rippled the water. But now I know they were. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside its envelope. Some people inherit money. Some inherit businesses. Some inherit property. I inherited something I'd spent my entire life searching for. The truth. And finally, the peace that came with it.